A warm welcome to all. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on which part of the country or world you're joining from. Welcome to the seminar and kind of the event that CFO Connect have kindly put on. This year's CFO Connect Summit is all about AI in finance, designed to help you stay ahead of the curve, from panel discussions to practical use cases and demos of AI-powered finance tools. The summit is hosted by CFO Connect, a global community of more than 12,000 finance leaders powered by Spendesk. Today, we'll be diving into the topic of future-proofing your finance career. We'll cover a whole array of different areas over the next kind of 50 minutes to include upskilling, salary trends, and thriving alongside AI, of course. My name is Dav Masaon, and I will be the moderator today. I'm the co-founder of Zanda, an executive search firm that's been around for 8 years. We cover North America, Europe, and the UK, placing finance leaders like yourself into growing technology companies from Series A to D. So we work with CFOs, VPs of finance, and controllers. So hopefully I've got a bit to say around AI in terms of what employers' expectations are there and then the kind of transition and shift that we're seeing, as well as what candidates are doing to upskill their own skills in AI. Just a few housekeeping rules. So we'll dive into a Q&A very shortly with the esteemed panelists who will introduce themselves very shortly. And then we'll have an audience participation. Please, therefore, raise any questions you have via the Q&A tab that you can see in front of you, and I'll kind of collate those questions to pose to our panelists. So, I'm going to go straight into it. So, we have today with us Jessica Pillow, Global Head of Total Rewards at Deel, and Mike Tsang, Finance Director ARIA. So, Jessica, it'd be great to get a quick introduction from yourself, followed by Mike.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Really glad to be speaking at CFO Connect again. I am Jessica Pillow, and I head up Total Rewards here at Deel. At Deel, we are a global people platform spanning where we enable companies to hire and onboard and manage their workforce across over 150 countries. I'm sorry. I have the pleasure of running Total Rewards for over 7,000 team members in over 120 countries. So no short order there. Um, I have been in the compensation space for over 20 years. So in a global setting, right? So not a lot surprises me anymore in the compensation space, and really excited about this topic.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Mike.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone. This is my first time speaking at this event, so really super pumped to be talking about this subject, which is really important. So I'm Mike Tsang. I'm Director of Finance at ARIA. ARIA stands for the Advanced Research and Invention Agency. So we are a R&D funding agency for breakthrough technologies, set up by the UK government as effectively like a government-funded startup a couple of years ago. In terms of how I got here, I was always being motivated by the intersection of impact and growth, and that kind of took me into like my NGO world, and then into Life Science Research Institute, where I kind of like worked in setting that up. And then when the UK said that they were setting up something for breakthrough technologies, which comes a lot from US public investment in the 1960s onwards, that formed things such as basically the whole birth of the internet, the computing industry, GPS, mRNA vaccines, I really knew I wanted to be part of that. So my role as finance director is helping to build that operational machine. We have 8 separate programs that are really like cross technology, everything from neurotech to robotics to synthetic plants, each backed by about 50 to 60 million pounds. And you can imagine that, coming as a director of finance, I'm not a coder. I don't really have that technical background, although I understand a little bit. And AI really helps us to do things, much faster and more thoroughly. And why I'm really excited about this as opportunities is it frees up time and space for new strategic insights, which is really, as finance leaders, what we should be looking at. So that's my approach.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Mike. As I'm sure you'd agree, very, very experienced and well-versed panel that we have today. So What I'm going to do is start off straight away with a poll to get everyone involved and to provide some, I suppose, useful facts and figures for the panelists to discuss. But if we can get that poll up now, that'd be useful. So the question will come up very soon, which is all around, what, which AI related skill do you think will be the most important for your career in the next 2 years? Data literacy, workflow automation, AI governance, cross-functional collaboration with AI, or, not sure yet. So yeah, please vote. And let's see what the response is like. So what we're seeing here is 48% are going for workflow automation. So tools like Copilot, ChatGPT, now to 52%. And then kind of data literacy is coming up as second with 23%. So yeah, interesting stats for us to digest for sure. And further stats, which will help our conversation with the panelists. The CFO Connect just released the CFO Tools report, and some of the headline stats from that. 56% of finance leaders now use AI in their work, up from 31% in 2024 and only 17% in 2023. 35% of finance leaders use ChatGPT daily, no surprise there. And AI use is mostly admin and comms versus true finance processes, showing early stage adoption. And startups that we're very familiar with are demonstrating early adoption of AI tools quicker, bearing in mind their nimble nature. Larger companies tend to stick to big generalist LLMs, as we've seen there, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Claude, to name a few. So, so I'm going to go straight into it. Mike, a question kind of to you first off. How is AI reshaping finance roles, would you say, Mike? And what mindset do professionals need to thrive?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that everyone's thinking about at the moment, isn't it? And I guess, for me, I kind of think of it in two ways. So you've got the thing for your teams and team structures, et cetera. And then you've kind of got it for leaders as well, which is probably going to be a lot of the people and what they're thinking about on this call. So I guess for teams, I mean, AI across all different types of functional teams, it really starts to, compresses functions and it automates a lot of the basics. And that's the bit that gets everyone excited at the moment. So I think if you can deploy that well, then you can get teams to kind of focus on growth, on strategy, on scaling faster. And I would say for many of the members of my teams, it's really exciting, especially if you're kind of like early mid-career, because you get to move beyond just the operation. If you're skilled in using AI, you can start to really identify and even solve problems almost by yourself in the wider business. And it kind of reminds me of, like the revolution we had with data science about 10 years ago or so, where if you're positioned well in finance, you can really lean into that. But if not, then your value will start to be taken by other parts of the business who can deliver that, who can understand data structures, who can deploy. So that's for teams. And then I guess for leaders, I think, the mindset to thrive, I think you really got to make this transition inspiring and not intimidating, because it can be, that kind of change can be a little bit intimidating. So I always think you need to set the direction, set the strategy, bring the energy. And I think maybe quite importantly to really understand that we need almost an experimental mindset, because we're all learning with this. Like I said, I'm not a coder by training. So you really need to lean into that curiosity and, approaching things from first principles. It's something that we try to talk about a lot at ARIA, being a breakthrough R&D funder. And I take a lot of inspiration from that.
And Mike, just quickly on that, there's a new philosophy coming out right now whereby a lot of companies and a lot of experts think that there will be a leaner team, right? Whereby there is a CFO and there's then CFO will be steering and directing those automation tools, and that the automation tools seems as though will infiltrate the fp&a controller side. quite a bit over the next few years. I mean, what are your thoughts around that? Do you think that could be the structure of the future whereby I don't obviously want to, have your role diminished in any way, but, what do you think of that kind of new philosophy and that potential new structure?
Yeah, I think that new structure will definitely be right for some teams, for sure. I think, you're seeing this in loads of different industries, like that consulting pyramid turning into something that looks a bit more like an obelisk, right? So there's fewer kind of positions at the lower end. Um, I think the key part is just think of it as an opportunity and not a threat. I think for my team, I've been quite lucky in that we've got a lean team to begin with. So, we're not talking about having a leaner team. We're talking about doing more with what we've got, doing it more thoroughly, doing it at scale, doing it faster. And I guess the strategy I'm trying to pursue with my team is to bring in any resources to kind of take that business as usual, more transactional stuff off of them, so that they can do the real value add stuff, which everyone wants their team to do.
Yeah.
The value added strategic stuff, and I think they've been really really excited about that.
And just Mike raised the point around an experimental mindset. I like that term. What do you think about that? I mean, are you seeing that deal? And is it key to adopt that type of mindset right now and be experimental and don't turn your nose up to it and really give it a go?
Yeah, there's definitely no playbook, right? Like I think that we're all sitting around the room wondering how do we have this AI and it's not going anywhere? And how do we use it in our day to day? What we're doing at Deal is we're leaning into, and what I continue to push my teams to lean into is to treat it like a product, right? So you're constantly testing, iterating, making small incremental movements to really like test the product and to see how it can be embedded to get rid of those, very tactical things that, I mean, nobody wants to do the tactical things long term, right? And so AI is enabling us to remove those off of people's plates to kind of lean into those more strategic, juicy things that people want and crave.
Yeah. And obviously deal or of the size, then obviously I raised at the start of this Q&A session, the fact that startups are a little bit more nimble and experimental when it comes to AI tools versus your larger, bigger companies. How are you still nimble and experimental with, with that size of company you are?
Yeah, even at 7,000 people distributed in the way that we are still very experimental. We are taking an approach to really lean into enabling and empowering people to constantly optimize and iterate and use AI. We're building AI functionality directly into the product. And so the company's leaning into it. So it's creating that natural excitement internally. So we really are saying, hey, this is the future. Personally on my team, I'm viewing AI just as much as a resource as my headcount. And so that kind of mindset shift there has really kind of gained that traction and excitement on the change curve.
Right. And like obviously Jessica touches upon mindset there. I mean, what skills and kind of mindset are becoming essential, do you think, for finance professionals in the age of AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of soft skills, the good news is that CFOs, finance directors, they tend to do things like curiosity and rigor, like those two ends of the spectrum, really, really well. And I think that principle remains the same. AI kind of heightens the importance of that a bit more. So, what do I mean by that? Curiosity, you've got to be able to explore the vision and, like I said, experiment and embracing failures as learnings. So one of the interesting things that we've been working on is, some of this stuff doesn't, if you try to build a tool that uses AI, the ROI might not be immediate. It might be a little bit more long term, and you do need to think in across those lines, I think. For rigor, I think what's really key is to try to put some sort of structure around the adoption. So, I get my team to do kind of AI, and I'd also throw like automation in there, do assessments. So, what things are the things that's just causing the most friction, that's just really causing sticking points in, like day to day. and in monthly, quarterly cycles, figuring out what the potential solutions are, what's the kind of investment in times, can they do that by themselves or do they need more technical support? And then really getting some sort of structure into it so that we can understand what the roadmap is for using AI. I think in terms of hard skills, what really does help is having some experience with data structures, warehousing systems. CFOs will be good at this already. But having that understanding will really help. And I think going back a little bit, Dav, to what you were saying a little bit earlier about leaner teams, I think one of the really big wins is being able to prototype kind of AI-enabled apps and tools yourself without having to involve technical staff right at the kind of ideation stage. And, if there's anything that's kind of causing a little bit more leanness or agility, I think that would be, and it would be a huge win. That's something that has been really exciting for me and my team.
And just get, what responsibility do employers have when it comes to really upskilling their employees right now? Should they be front-footed in that? Should they encourage, their employees to do external courses, or would you bring someone in-house to, really roll out certain training and development? What are your thoughts around that?
I think this is the conversation that the majority of organizations are having right now. And my peers that I talk to in the industry, and amongst our leadership team is, where is the responsibility? Is it a shared responsibility? Is it the responsibility of your CTO, your chief technology officer, your head of HR? Is it the responsibility of the individual to be curious? And I think that we're starting to see organizations on a few different scales, right? Either it's, hey, we're, try to use AI in your own, leaving people to their own devices. Or on the other end, hey, as an organization, we're adopting an enterprise, ChatGPT license. This is how we want to adopt it. I've also seen organizations, and what we're doing at Deel is we're identifying, collectively, pulsing everyone on teams to say, okay, what is the low hanging fruit? Where are we spending a lot of man hours? And then collectively coming up with a plan and a philosophy around, okay, this particular task, we are going to focus and optimize. So I think I really think that a lot of organizations are figuring out, well, how do we lean in? How do we enable team members? Do we offer training? Do we offer subsidies for people to take additional training? I think that we're going to start to see it pick up as more organizations start to adopt, whether it's an enterprise license, or, hey, we're going to enable you to use a Gemini plugin on G Suite.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, we had a job in the other day, and the employer, as part of their benefits, will enroll that person on a 3-month AI finance course. That's really
Awesome.
externally with a consultant, and I think that is amazing. And a very forward thinking. Now,
Mhm.
it needs to be steered in the right way. As Mike alluded to, there's so much out there, so you need to go about it in a methodical, logical manner. But just interesting to see how companies are, as you said, Jessica, really taking that front foot, and those that do will become that employer of choice, and the exciting business to work for.
Agree. And I think from a skills perspective, and I love what Mike said, and I lean into this as well, it's just, you have to have natural curiosity. I'm finding that the people that are naturally curious and are staying curious are on the forefront of whether it's, hey, I did this cool thing, take a look, and then it starts to inspire others. But right now we're in this figure it out phase.
Yeah, great. And just get how do you think AI is impacting salaries right now? Maybe I could contribute to as well, but but be interested to hear from your side. Is there a more of a demand, specifically within finance, of having some sort of AI automation experience? And if that is the result, is that really going to elevate your salary and your kind of market expectation, really?
I think that that is the $1 million question that compensation professionals and finance professionals should be looking after right now. So if we think back to, let's say, 7 to 10 years ago when we had the data science, big data boom, that was the talk, right? We're kind of in that right now, right? I think AI is definitely way more expanded than that, but uh, we are starting to see um, premiums on AI machine learning specific roles. It's still a very much wait and see. What is everyone else doing? Is there really a premium? And if again you think back to that 7 to 10 years ago, we saw a premium and an uptick on big data, data science roles, and now they're embedded into organizations, right? Like it's embedded into core functions. That is the direction that we're starting to see. I'm about to publish our global compensation report. And I'll give you a preview. One of the statistics is there's an uptick in AI roles on a global scale. Um, we are seeing an uptick also on salary premiums for those specific roles. I think give it a few years and it'll start to normalize to be a embedded core function.
And Mike, when you're recruiting for your team, is that one of the key skills you're looking at now in your team? Have they done any AI automation or played around with AI?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I haven't actually, when I've been recruited for my team, I haven't put something specifically in AI, but it's moving so fast. So I probably would do in the future. What I have done is very much lent on behaviors. So because it's so new, you're not, expecting someone to have, built an app through Lovable or something, but really looking at behaviors, people who can approach things from first principles, who have that creative mindset, who've worked with data, who can understand it, who can also like break down an approach, tactically and strategically why we would do to something. So I think having that kind of like mental rigor, that I definitely ask for that in kind of like all team members that I've gone out to recruit for. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And then, one of the questions that we're asking straight off the bat is, what AI tools are you familiar with? And what have you done from an automation perspective? Because on the flip side, that's what the employers are, expecting, especially in the space we operate in, which, as alluded to, is that kind of startup space. It's paramount. Efficiency is key, and keeping costs low is key. So bringing about AI automation is what they're doing a lot of. So candidates with that experience are going to be head and shoulders above the rest right now. So it's worth noting. And AI is obviously, Michael, it's still quite new, relatively speaking, and there's a question mark over using it across the CFO house, both accounting and finance. Accounting probably less so because of that compliance piece. How can AI be used responsibly with that in mind? If the accounting function, for example, want to incorporate that particular tool or tools within their function, how can they do it responsibly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got to, as finance leaders, I think you've got to be able to take people on the journey. I think that starts by kind of, building that trust and clarity, and that's anything to do with, where your data is housed, what's your security stance, etc. But being quite pragmatic as well. We all know that if the restrictions are too tight, people find workarounds and they have shadow IT or shadow AI. And, you've got to be really careful about the data nowadays, especially in the area that ARIA works in. Um, you know, I think part of building that trust as well is, I always communicate that we use AI as a tool alongside, but the human will take the decision. And I think that gives a lot of external trust, both in the organization and outside to stakeholders. And I think once you got that, then, give people that confidence to experiment. It's a really exciting point for people at the junior mid level. Create space for their careers to expand. I think I said this a bit earlier, but what one decision I had to make was, maybe a lot of companies are thinking about bringing in like consultants or AI consultants to kind of work on things. And that's definitely an approach that you could use. I think the approach that I've tended to prefer so far is actually bringing people to free up some time for existing staff. So bringing people in on a fractional or temporary basis, but at a more junior level, so that existing staff can use their value in their intimacy with the business to create the tools. And, I really loved what Jessica said earlier about upskilling. I mean, you've got to, it's a bit of a pinch approach. You're looking for people who can go and grasp that opportunity, but also provide them the ability and any training that they need to be able to grasp that.
And Jessica, how high up should AI investment be at kind of board meetings and across that C-level on a monthly basis? Should it be up there with headcount spend? Should there be a separate kind of tab for companies to really kind of invest in that area continuously and discuss it on a regular basis as such?
I really think so. It's something that I am looking at internally at Deel, right? It's, our headcount expense is one of the biggest line items in our budget. And so our approach and what we're exploring, even at the board level, is what investment are we going to make to AI to maybe offset some of that headcount expense? And again, it's to cover off the low hanging fruit. To Mike's point, there still needs to be that human touch and element. You need to have that human, whether it's they're making a decision or taking advice, or reviewing the data. Because if you're operating in a global environment, whether you're in one country or many, compliance is always a concern, and that human element is there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And kind of just rounding off the question to you both, could you share one of your personal favorite examples of impactful AI use cases in your work as such, minus ChatGPT?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, yeah. So I don't know if anyone has used LinkedIn talent capacity insights. So one of the things that, again, being responsible for 7,000 team members over 120 countries, one of the things that I'm using LinkedIn talent insights for is um, to be able to look at, they offer really great, basically like talent capacity heat maps. So I can take specific competencies or skill sets that we're hiring for, let's say for a high volume role like an account executive. And let's say I need somebody with specific language skills, et cetera. I can use LinkedIn to kind of give me that heat map of where that talent lives. I can then link that back to our applicant tracking system. To then we're using bots to kind of scan internally the millions of applications that we have at Deel to then pull out that talent as well and kind of mirror it there. So I'm looking at it to take it a step further in really trying to maximize my headcount expense. And that, it gives speed to my recruiting team on where they're looking for talent. And it's also, having us look in maybe lower cost locations for talent, especially for those high volume roles that we have. So that's kind of my hot thing that I'm on right now, especially as I'm budget planning for 2026.
Great advice, Mike.
Just to say that was great. I've not really heard about that, Jessica.
Yeah,
So
can
I
I,
need to speak
Mike,
about that afterwards. Yeah.
phone a friend, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think for me, so just for a bit of context, I guess I think of like use of AI, especially in kind of like finance stacks, to be there's three types, right? So you've got like the LLMs, and that's really great for like taking some of the cognitive load off of problem solving, or something that maybe you would like send a team member away and think about deeply for, half a day. You can get to that really quickly. Then you've got the in-system stuff and, like other SaaS software like Spendesk and others, they do that really, really well. And, everyone's trying to have like AI-enabled tools within their own system and for customer acquisition. And then I guess the third thing, which I'm most excited about, are just bespoke builds. So we've got a few things that we do that are very bespoke to ARIA. And so being able to like use like Lovable or Airtable or Google AI Studio to vibe code and prototype an idea really, really quickly, but without having to go to a data engineering team or to go to a data science team. and to work that up and work through what problem you're trying to solve and the value proposition for your business is super exciting. And, and then afterwards you can go to the engineers and the product managers to deploy it. But that's what we've been really doing at the moment. That's the newest bit of technology that's really got me excited.
Awesome. Well, keen to get the audience involved who've been listening very carefully. So I'm just going to go with some of the questions from the audience. I think we've got notes here. So in terms of the most popular, the most kind of the ones that we want to hear the answers to. So first one comes from Chris. What are the most important top 3 ROI metrics you should measure for AI, e.g. adoption, efficiency? Good question. Who wants to stab at that first, Jessica? Like,
Go ahead, Mike. I feel like I've been chatting a lot.
Wow, you know what? I find this one quite tricky because I don't immediately look at ROI metrics as a way of checking to begin with. I mean, you've got all sorts of efficiency metrics if you're going to work more on the finance ops side, but I think the real unlock is really on the tactical to strategic end. So I don't, if I'm honest, I don't really track ROI metrics that religiously, not on a monthly or quarterly basis at the moment, because I want my team to be able to experiment. I'd be interested to know, because my suspicion is a lot of people on this call are, quite at the early stage of experimentation, because we're all learners here.
yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, I would also add to that. I think with AI, as mentioned, being relatively new still, I think metrics will come into play, and obviously finance is usually the first one to roll out any metrics. So if it is being incorporated and there's a budget for AI in finance and accounting, then I would imagine there's probably going to be some sort of metrics that are already in play or about to come into play to see the value, which is vitally important, I would imagine. So interesting to see how that unfolds in terms of what metrics are evaluated over the coming years. But Jessica, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I agree. I really think that it will come, where we start to embed very specific ROI metrics into use cases for AI, right? Because especially if there is a spend or an expense associated with maybe an investment into certain AI technology, I think that that's where we'll start to see. I think in the operations function, you'll start to see maybe like efficiency gains, and that can be tracked. But right now, it's at least internally at Deel and talking to others, it's what can we do? And not necessarily, well, what was the ROI? I think it's just that still that early stage that we're seeing.
Right. Yeah. And it goes all right.
Sorry. Yeah. Just to be a little bit more concrete on that for Christopher, what I would really suggest is to use your existing to use your existing ROI metrics and to see kind of how that changes, and maybe, setting targets on that rather than thinking about specific AI adoption or AI specific metrics. I mean, I'm finding that quite useful myself, and I can see each of them improve along the way, but I must admit, I haven't been so much looking at it from a, exact business case perspective.
Yeah, and the best example I have that we're using internally where we have started to measure ROI is on when I think it's actually very heavy across HR teams is on talent acquisition. So we get, I think, 1.5 million to 2 million applicants a year at Deel. That's a lot of resumes to scan for our talent acquisition team. And so we've introduced things like Covey, which are bots that we train to scan resumes to kind of narrow down. There is still that human touch in there, human touch point in there, but it at least is like streamlining that like individual review process that talent acquisition. And so we're starting to see the return there in that we're able to hire faster. We're able to bring in, now we're starting to measure, quality of candidate as well. So I think and it's still in a very experimental phase.
Yeah, and interesting. You mentioned it, Jessica, in terms of recruitment and how like AI is kind of really helping at the transactional level. So it's the same like for the function of accounting, the GL piece is being, kind of really disrupted by AI more than any other area. So, the question being, there's a lot of AI tools out there. Where do you start? For a company that's wanting to incorporate AI due to efficient, because you want to increase the efficiency, where do you start? Is it those high transactional, repetitive tasks that you really evaluate as a company and think, right, what tools are out there to kind of utilize there? I mean, would that be the first course of action, Jessica?
Yeah. And one of the things, I mean, applying it to finance, one of the things that we're looking at are expense reimbursements. Using AI to scan those business or travel expenses that, whether your accounting team is reconciling or your expense team is reconciling, you still have that human touch there, but it's kind of automating that process to really streamline and just make it more efficient. So,
Mhm. Great.
Yeah, that's definitely, it's a very similar use case for us actually.
yeah.
So for context, ARIA, we're soon to have about a £1 billion R&D portfolio
Mhm.
that we fund. And that's across a huge range of, companies, not just, academic institutions, but startups, one-person bands, etc. So for example, we check everything that comes in, make sure that they are spending it on things that are actually advancing the R&D research, but it's also eligible according to our rules. Now, that's a bit of a thankless task for a lot of people, but we've built a tool that will help kind of automate all of that so it can do it faster and more thoroughly. And I think with that, then you can use the spare capacity for your team to do stuff that is, hugely valuable for the organization.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And again, like I said, it's picking one thing and testing it, iterating it, treating it like that product, getting it to a better place, and then like just continuing to build on it. So,
Yeah, and I think it's how it's kind of communicated internally as well, in the sense that it's making your role more commercial and exciting, right? Because some of
yeah,
the repetitive tasks
yeah,
are done by an automation tool as such. So I think it's something that we've adapted ourselves, whereby we've made our people more commercial, because some of the kind of expenses or whatever else have been automated by a certain tool. On the training and development piece that we touched on earlier, question from Katie, if you want to upskill in the AI area, where or what is the best way to achieve that? Are there any recommended courses, tutorials? Yeah, I know we wanted Jessica. Any kind of bits of advice there?
I'm honestly, I haven't really explored this externally. I know that internally it's a lot of, hey, go figure it out yourself. And I think that we're still there on the, you have to be naturally curious, and if you can do a few really cool things, like it's just going to inspire you to continue. Not something that I've personally explored externally as far as courses. Again, I think the focus has been really kind of internal, use your own natural curiosity.
Yeah. And Mike, anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely echo that. I've looked at some of the courses, but they haven't quite hit the mark. For me, it's the most value I've had are, often sessions that CFO Connect might arrange, or, networks where there's other finance
Well,
professionals.
the money.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yep. But forums that you can really talk about very concrete ways that people have experimented and had some wins. I'm really a finance leader that aims at, I want to understand exactly how they've done that, not just like a, mental framework for doing it. Those have been the most valuable. So whether it's speaking to peers, whether it's, YouTube videos often, up in LinkedIn, just seeing concretely what people have done, for those first 3, 4, 5 wins.
I
Yeah.
completely agree. I think that a lot of the AI topics can be pretty saturated, right? Like really saturated right now, and a lot of theory. And I think that we're starting to see that shift in what are we practically doing? And that's, like similar to the talent capacity AI functionality that we're using internally, right? Like, I think it's finding those very specific examples from peers of, hey, I did this really cool thing. And it gets you thinking of like, well, how can I apply this internally to my organization?
And I think it's worth noting that, you can also learn on the job, right? So in your current company, what can you do that's really going to be innovative from an AI automation perspective? We've already discussed what a typical user case is for AI automation. It's those repetitive kind of administrative tasks. So not just looking at your world of finance and accounting, but outside, across the organization, that's what a true business partner is. What is it that your company can adopt that will help them, and go away and look into that? And there's so many suppliers and systems out there that you could then explore and speak to them directly. And that would really be a forward thinking kind of, person for me. And that will demonstrate initiative to hopefully the employer. But at the same time, you're learning and developing in that realm of AI. So I think it's up to the person to be proactive in certain instances, which is needed in a company that maybe has been around for many years. That's a bit kind of, stubborn to AI and automation.
And I think also it's keeping up with companies that are focusing on AI and embedding AI into their product. So I'm sure every single finance leader on this call has gone through some type of merit cycle or annual company or inflation increase. So one of the things that we're building internally into our product at Deel is when I think of that merit cycle, it can be long. It could be months. And how can we use AI to analyze your workforce and to streamline and maximize the budget that you're spending on things like merit or inflation increases? So I think it's staying naturally curious about what you can do internally, but use organizations and companies that are embedding this as part of their product as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Kumar raised, learn from your peers. There's obviously going to be people in your organization that are more climatized to technology and AI. I lean on them in my organizations and learn off them, and explore via, those means as well. So, that's definitely worth noting as well. I had a question from Steve. Are there ethical conundrums and pitfalls that should be considered as firms rush to be early adopters? If so, how do you think they should be approached? Mike?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I'd love to hear what Jessica has to say about this. Only because, as stewards of existing employees as well, we have a responsibility to make sure that their career routes are, well rewarded, and has a path that's valuable for them. So it kind of goes back to what I said earlier about making sure that change is not threatening. That I do think that AI has a huge amount of opportunities for everyone across like all career stages. For me, there's ethical consideration, beyond just the kind of like the data and, exactly where your data is stored, for example. But I think there's a duty of care to existing staff in this kind of transition.
Yeah, for me, I always go back to compliance, right? AI is great in helping us with those low hanging fruit, but it isn't. It's just one data point, or it's one input. I think that it some of the, whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT, pros and cons to each, but you have to continue to have that human touch and human element. Also, if you are in within your finance teams, you want to be very mindful of confidentiality. So whether that's implementing an enterprise wide product for people to be able to use because you want to protect confidentiality. Um, uh, I'm seeing more AI policies in organizations pop up that give guidance to employees on what is appropriate versus not. So I would say like stay very mindful of the compliance and the confidentiality. So, and I think employers have to be on the forefront of that and come out and say, this is our stance, this is our approach. If you're not thinking about it or your HR teams aren't partnering to think about it, maybe it's worth a conversation. If you leave people to their own devices, then you don't want to be in a situation where they're dumping, loads of confidential data into an unprotected source.
Yeah, great. And closely related to that, Steve has asked, from corporate policy making perspective, what are some of the processes and behaviors that leadership should require, would not be replaced by AI, but always remain human centric and controlled? I don't know if that's a question or a
Yeah.
statement. Is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed. Very good. And there was a question around the importance of AI competencies in the future of the recruiting funnel. I think not just specifically from a finance perspective. I think there's a lot of tools out there across fp&a and the GL side that a lot of companies are using, and they're on, especially now where companies are saying, okay, we want a candidate who's used Light or Rillet or whatever else, because we know that's very good across this area and that area. I only want to see candidates with that experience. So more and more we're seeing that. So I think, once again, wherever you can utilize a particular system within your current company, that's only going to better your marketability, let's say, moving forward. Mike, I don't know if you would second that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think I think everyone should be looking at their own tech stack and really engaging more in partnership, because all the SaaS companies are, they're injecting AI power into their tools. And so really understanding what their roadmap is and also having the chance to influence that, because they're looking for feedback as well as to what would be useful for their customers. I think that part would be really interesting. I think of it much more of a partnership now as opposed to like a supplier purchaser arrangement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage, those that are looking for work or generally actually on their LinkedIn or on their resume to start off with how you have, adopted and used AI in the past and most recently, and what impact and efficiency that's led to. That's really going to make you stand out. Employers will love that. They'll be like, really, that person's very forward thinking and embracing new technology. So, Jessica, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's going to start to become the norm, right? Like in a finance setting, maybe you're looking for someone with Anaplan or Workday experience. Now you're going to possibly be looking for somebody with, ChatGPT or other experience. So
Excellent. Well, that's perfect timing because we are rounding off now. Thank you for all that have attended. I think we've nearly got 500 people here. Wow, what an amazing
Wow.
attendance.
from everywhere. I love it.
You celebrity, Jessica, Mike have done well to bring in the numbers, but what an engaging session, and I'm sure the attendees would have appreciated your insights and knowledge and expertise in what is a topic that is much discussed. So thank you for joining the CFO Connect events powered by Spendesk. Obviously, the tool, the CFO tool report is out. Access that for further insights, and obviously enjoy the next couple of days, and really get involved in some of the other sessions that CFO Connect have put on for for the finance community. Thank you very much, all. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dav. Great
Yeah.
session.
Thanks, Deb.